Welcome, folks, back to Dominant Mets Nation. Let me start off by saying this. It was not pretty. Today's New York Mets win over the Toronto Blue Jays. The Mets literally squeak this game out, winning 3-2. But let me tell you this. This is the type of game that good teams win. The New York Mets, on a very dreary, rainy, cloudy day at Citi Field, the field was soaked. Outfield, you could see the ball trickling in the outfield, the water kicking up. It was not a pleasant day to play baseball. Chris Bassett coming back to Citi Field, and I'm telling you, this guy was looking sharp. Yes, the Mets lineup, I believe, made Bassett look a bit better, but you got to give Bassett credit. I think he stood out the most. For the Blue Jays, that is 6 2/3 innings going, 9 strikeouts, befuddling the New York Mets hitters, befuddling. Literally, this guy at this point in his career, he doesn't have a crazy fastball. The fastball right now, even if you go to Baseball Savant, averages like 91.5 miles per hour. I think one or two pitches got to 93, but this guy's got 6 or 7 pitches with movement, curveball, changeup, sinker. Chris Bassett was locating. You see how a guy with not such velocity can be successful. Chris Bassett, give him all the credit in the world because he was making the New York Mets hitters look silly. And, inducing a lot of soft contact from hitters. And you know what? Quite frankly, it was extremely disappointing watching our New York Mets lineup not get anything going. It was extremely disappointing. Then on the other side, you see Griffin Canning. And Griffin Canning today, it was a struggle. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what more could you expect from Griffin Canning? Today, yes, it was a struggle, but at the end of the day, Griffin Canning pitched 4 innings, allowed 4 hits, allowed only 1 earned run through 2 games. He's got a 2.79 ERA. So, Griffin Canning on the year has been very good. The thing that really hasn't been what it's supposed to is the New York Mets lineup. And, I keep writing in my scorecard, too many outs. Too many outs as you go throughout that lineup. Today, thank God, Jesse Winker, he brought his bat today, and he had an excellent game. If not for Jesse Winker, the New York Mets would be going home with an L. But this is what good teams do. On a nightly basis, you have a different hero. Winker today, he was the hero. 3 hits, multiple extra base hits, 2 triples, a double, had that big hit in the 8th inning to drive in the 2 runs. And Jesse Winker, you got to give him all the credit in the world. But, if you go back like early on, the New York Mets just couldn't get anything going. First inning, Lindor, double. Then after that, you think, you're set up good. You got no outs. You got a runner already in scoring position, and you have Juan Soto coming up. Well, Juan Soto hits a pop-up to center field. Lindor goes to third base, and you're still in a decent situation. You have Alonso coming up, guy on third base, 1 out, right? In that position, good teams should be able to push across 1 run, right? You should be able to. But you give Bassett credit. A lot of the pitchers have been pounding Alonso on the outside part of the plate. Bassett did the opposite. He started pounding Alonso in. And to Alonso's credit, he took a couple very close pitches. He worked the count to 3-2, and then he was thrown a very nasty curveball, and Alonso struck out. All right, it was a tough at bat. It was a tough battle. Alonso didn't come through. And, up until that point, Alonso had 30 plate appearances and only had 2 strikeouts. Only 2. So Alonso before that hadn't really been striking out a lot. All right, so Nimmo comes up, works it to 3-2 count, and then give Bassett a credit again. He induces a very soft ground ball from Nimmo, 4-3 put out, gets out of the jam. All right, so you know what? You go to the second inning. Um, you go to the second inning, and really the same thing happened. Winker gets on, lead off double, Vientos up, and this is where you're hoping Vientos can push the runner at least to third base, at least make a productive out. Vientos, unfortunately, he strikes out, and then you got Beatty coming up to the plate. Not good as well. He takes a curveball looking. And then Siri, he pops up. He actually popped up foul, and that ended the inning. And so, right early on, the Mets had opportunities getting a man in scoring position twice, first and second inning, and not having anything to show for it. So it was very, very frustrating early on. And in my head, I'm thinking, all right, let's push at least 1 or 2 runs across, because I'm thinking the rain is coming. You saw rain in the forecast around after 9 o'clock. So just in case the game would be called early, you would hope that the Mets were able to put a couple runs on the board. But it wasn't to be. Bassett, again, was really cruising. He really was. So I give him credit. Bassett, in my opinion, was really impressive. But the Mets still, if you make outs or if you play a certain way, you have to be productive. The Mets were not being productive early on. And again, there were way too many outs in the lineup early on. I mean, honestly, we need more from Vientos. We need more from the end of the lineup. Soto, it looks like he's gone a bit cold. Nimmo, he had an 0 for today. And, a lot of guys that we're counting on, you really have to get these guys going. And, it's all the pitching. It's really all the pitching. I mean, right now, the Mets have allowed the least runs in all of baseball. All of baseball. So all the fans, everybody who was saying them, and this could change, but who are worried about early on the Mets staff being the worst. I heard historically people saying that this pitching staff is the worst ever. Thus far, you couldn't be further from being right. You're completely wrong. You're completely wrong as we stand right now. Yes, things can change. But through 8 games, the Mets are 5-3, and they have been pitching extremely well. All right, so the Mets had opportunities this game, weren't really able to take advantage early on. 7th inning again, the Mets were able to load the bases, but the Blue Jays were able to squeak out of it. 8th inning, different story. New York Mets got a couple guys on base. Lindor gets on base. Soto gets a big hit. You got a couple men on base, and then Winker, that's when he came up. Again, Winker was hot coming into that at bat. He already had a triple. He already had a double. Then he smokes another triple. So great job, Jesse Winker. And then when you get to the 9th inning, it's 2-2, tied up. And again, the New York Mets put pressure on the opposing. They put pressure on the opposing staff. A couple men get on base, and then Lindor hits that line drive to center field. It was deep enough to score the man on third, and the Mets were able to literally eke this game out. But here's the thing: it was not a pretty win. It was not a pretty win, and I think this is a game that the New York Mets would have lost certainly in 2023, but early on in 2024, this was a game that the New York Mets would have lost. They would have lost that game in April and May. But it really feels good that it's early in the season and the Mets are able to win a game like this. And, it's about winning series. The Mets, they got off to a slow start. They lost the series in Houston, but since then, you win the series in Miami. You already won the series right now against the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Toronto Blue Jays, you got to give the Mets pitching staff a lot of credit. That is a good hitting team. The Blue Jays are a very good hitting team. and the Mets have really stymied their hitters. And, besides a couple of runs here and there, the Blue Jays have done zippo. So you give the Mets staff a lot of credit, and you give the bullpen credit. In this game, you had Griffin Canning only going 4 innings. So you had to have Budo come in the 5th inning. Budo kind of struggled a bit early on. He inherited 2 runners. And, in my opinion, he needed a little time to get going. So Budo comes in. He's got 2 men on base. Then Guerrero comes up. Guerrero hits a single. That brings in a man. And that was when the Blue Jays scored their first run. Then Santander flew out. Then you have Budo walk a guy. Then he struck out Kirk, and he got Springer to induce a ball to shortstop. So you had to have Budo kind of settle in the game. Once he settled in, he was a bit better. But, more importantly, Brazoban comes in 2 1/3 innings, allows 0 runs, 1 hit. Diaz comes in for another inning. The Mets bullpen, the pitching staff as a whole, like I said, the Mets have only allowed 21 runs in all of their games. In 8 games, they've allowed 21 runs, which is the least in all of MLB, folks. The least. I think we just have to take a little moment and recognize how good the Mets starters are right now, because it is really good, really good. All right, so that's great. You have the New York Mets pitchers looking phenomenal. But the problem and the supposed strength of this New York Mets ball club was and is their offense, right? And if you look at their offense, there is only one guy hitting above 300. Actually, there's only one guy hitting above 250, and that's Luis Torrens, and he's hitting 300. So Luis Torrens was out this game with a minor injury. But still, the rest of the bats got to get going. The next highest average, you have Pete Alonso at 250. Pete had a bit of a cold game, which is, all right, that's going to happen. But the other bats have to get going. Carlos Mendoza was asked about Brett Beatty. Are you concerned? Brett Beatty is batting 111, 2 hits. He has 18 at-bats, so he's literally 2 for 18. Not very good. He has 6 strikeouts more importantly, and that is the team, well, actually not the team lead. Mark Vientos leads the team in strikeouts with 7, and right behind them, you have Brett Beatty with 6. So, again, another guy, Mark Vientos, as bad as Brett Beatty is batting 111, you have Mr. Mark Vientos batting .097. And, it's disappointing. Brett Beatty, you saw him in spring training smoking the ball, hitting above 400 with the on base, literally hitting like you would have hoped Brett Beatty was when we saw this guy being one of the best prospects in all of baseball. We finally thought, all right, he got his opportunity. He seized the moment in spring, and now we're going to get some production out of Mr. Brett Beatty. But alas, the first week and a half of MLB season, Mr. Brett Beatty not doing well. But you know what? Carlos Mendoza is still confident in him. I mean, that's what he says on the outside. But you got to know if you're Brett Beatty. McNeil is coming up. He's very close. He's taking batting practice. The opportunity is going to be slipping. So he's probably going to have another 2 weeks. I'll say 1 to 2 weeks of opportunities. But if he doesn't turn things around, it's only a matter of time. Vientos, because of last year, has bought himself more time. Met fans, obviously, we know what Vientos can do. I think Vientos is just really off. He's just really off. Timing-wise, is off. And, Ron Darling kind of said it. He was talking about balance with a lot of these hitters. Juan Soto specifically, he's saying, Juan Soto is a big, balanced guy. And I know to some people who haven't played ball, you hear balance like, oh, it's easy to balance. Just put your 2 feet in the box. No, sometimes it's if your timing is off and your balance is off, you could be an MVP hitter one year, and then next year you'll be struggling to hit 250. And it's just very simple mechanical adjustments. And you got guys like Juan Soto, MVP caliber players whose balance and timing is not on right now. And I expect that to get better. But at the end of the day, the New York Mets are still able to overcome so much damn failure in the lineup. Even Brandon Nimmo, who has had good at bats in the first 8 games, he's batting 226. Marte's batting 200. Soto's batting 241. Luis Angel Acuna's batting 143. Brett Beatty's batting 111. Francisco Lindor's batting 160. Jose Siri's batting .071. And folks, that is another one that is concerning. Siri, I expected a lot more. I know it's only been a handful of at bats, but that's another guy that I'm going to have a very close eye on. Siri is a guy who should get a lot of opportunity because of his glove, because of his tools. But folks, he's got to put bat to the ball. He's got to be able to get on base. He's got to be able to get on base. Now, he's got a career average of over 200, but obviously it's only a week and a half, so yeah, let's not go crazy. But early on, that's the story. The Mets bats are putrid. And you heard Keith Hernandez the other day talk about the lineup being like, kind of like the hitters is, not doing well. Not doing well. I'm not going to use the language he used. I don't want to misquote him, but he made a reference to the hitters as doing very, very bad. Very bad. So, I guess you could probably attribute the uncomfortable nature of the batters today because of the weather conditions. So, I'll excuse the hitters today. You could see both teams looked very uncomfortable in the box. Both teams did not do well. So it's not like, the Toronto Blue Jays were mashing and the Mets weren't. You could see that both teams were extremely uncomfortable in the box. But you know what? Tomorrow and beyond, as long as the conditions aren't rainy and this and that, there's really no excuse. There's really no excuse. The weather's going to be getting a little better too. So even if some of the players have trouble playing in the cold, which, still is an issue that you have to get over, because if you expect to play playoff ball, it's going to be cold. So that can't even be an issue. So you know what? In this game, obviously, player of the game, you got to give to Jesse Winker. There's really no doubt about that. And then I'd say the second player of the game, you'd probably give to the bullpen. The bullpen, again, held this in this game, held things close. And, Francisco Lindor hanging in tough, putting good, hanging, that at bat at the end of the game. You could say it's easy hitting a fly ball. A lot of people say that. They say it's easy to hit a game-winning, a fly ball that scores a run, but it's not always easy. It's really not always easy. And, the Mets lineup, they hung in tough. They got Bassett out of the game. That was probably, their biggest accomplishment, until the 8th inning. You had to get this guy out. Chris Bassett was befuddling all of the Mets hitters. And, sorry, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Yeah. So at the end of the day, Mets bullpen kept us in the game. You had a couple key clutch hits, good pitching performance. I think you can't expect more from Griffin Canning. He's giving you a lot. His slider's really working for him. He is locating today. Wasn't his best game this year. If you look at the spring training games and you look at his first couple starts, but still good enough. Good enough for a guy you gave $4 million, for a guy who was not successful at all last year. So Griffin Canning looking much better. The New York Mets pitching lab, I would say, is the third star. Third star. New York Mets pitching on a whole, giving up the least runs in all of baseball, and they are showing that they are looking at their pitchers' strengths. It's attack the zone, use movement, and really, I'm just like so impressed that almost every single pitcher has been successful thus far. So, let's see what happens. I'm excited. I am happy. The Mets are, I believe, one game out of. Let me double check. I believe they're one game out of first place. They're one game behind the Phillies. The Phillies should be 6-2. So the Phillies are 6-2. New York Mets one game back. We are now on a 3-game winning streak. The Mets have scored 31 runs on the year, which is not great. But they've allowed 21 runs against them. So their plus minus is plus 10. So, that is, positive. That is good. Not as good as the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees have a plus 32. But then again, the New York Yankees have allowed 40 runs. The Mets have only allowed 21 runs. So, when the season goes and progresses, the bats are going to get hot. But as a pitching staff, you're going to have to shut down the other team. And the New York Mets are doing that better than any other team. And they don't have I'd say the best pitcher from last year. They don't have Manaya, and one of their new fresh weapons. They don't have Montaz, and Sanga hasn't really gotten things going. So great stuff, folks. Let's go Mets. Drop your comment, like, subscribe. I will talk to everyone soon. Have a great day.